I, Ankur Raj, welcome you all to our newly made lecture series based on Cambridge University Press for the computer science domain. And students, here we are focusing on CAIE, IGCSE board and also CBSE school boards. And here we are referring the book which its name is Clickstart, and this is especially for grade 6 or class 6. And right now we are going through chapter number 1, whose name is Know Your Computer. And this, this is our microprocessor. Okay, and the topic which is covered here is evolution of computers, which we are referring from our last some of the lectures. So the topic is evolution of computers, and right now the main subtopic which we will refer today in this lecture number 6 for class 6 only is the 4th generation computers, and whose timeline is from 1971 to 2010. And the main technology for which our 4th generation computers was very much famous, it was basically for microprocessors. Okay students, now let's move ahead to understand this very topic. So here, the 4th generation computers. The 4th generation computers, okay, basically belongs from 1971 to 2010. Okay, from 1971 to 2010 was made or known for 4th generation computers, and especially what is the main technological effect was there is due to the help of microprocessor, because microprocessor was invented during this time only. So the introduction of microprocessor was, we can say, was a hallmark of the 4th generation computers. Means the 4th generation computers is known for what? For microprocessor. See, this is the diagram of microprocessor, and on the covering you can see like Intel 4, Intel 4, like that it is written. It is here only, the covering of this, because this is very delicate thing. It is very delicate. It is very sensitive, it can get harm. That's why it is covered. Okay, from here, one another thing is there to cover it, and on that thing it is written Intel 4. Means that what is the processor? What is the processor? We can say whenever you used to buy the computers, what is the processor? If the processor is good, it means the speed would be high. So what is the processor? It is a microprocessor, because it is very much small. We could see, we could figure out each of the pins here by the help of microscope. It is very much small. You can see here, it is very much small. 1 second. It is very much small. See, you can see here, these are the pins. Okay, so these comes under microprocessor. Okay, so here, if you would say, so microprocessor are the name given is because it is very small, macroscopic effect. We could say clearly all those pins by the help of microscope. And so is the processor and the microprocessor. So microprocessor is, we can say, a multi-purpose device which is used to speed up, used to increase the speed of computer. That's why whenever you used to buy computers or laptops, we focus on the microprocessor. Or not we say microprocessor. What is a microprocessor? We say processor. What is a processor? Is it Intel 4, Intel Pentium 4, Intel Pentium 5 and all, i5, i3, i6, okay, like this. So these are what? These are versions and variant, okay, made up of Intel computer company. Okay, so this is the microprocessor, and that was invented during the 1971 to 2010 time period, which was known for. So our microprocessor, the invention or the introduction of microprocessors was the hallmark of 4th generation computers. So 4th generation computers is known for what? Microprocessors only. And so they facilitated, means they helped to do what? For the automation of industrial and office purposes. Means by the help of microprocessor, they helps to facilitate, or was very much for, or we can say it was very much useful for the automation of industrial and office processes. Means automation means what? To increase the efficiency of industrial and office processes. Or we can say it is also very much helpful for the IT industry. And so around 1970, this technology of placing thousands of integrated circuits. Okay, so what is placed here on this green color board? Thousands of ICs. ICs means integrated circuits. Thousands of ICs are placed onto a single chip that was made of a microprocessor. Okay, microprocessor is then it is made. ICs we have read here in the third generation, which was from 1964 to 1971, where ICs were, this is the figure of the IC which we have read earlier. And so we could say that here on the microprocessor, on this green board, thousands of ICs are placed, thousands of integrated circuits are placed on that particular green board, which you can see here. Okay, thousands of integrated circuits, thousands of ICs are placed, and on which this green board, and that green board is nothing but a silicon chip, a single silicon chip, a chip, an electronic chip, which is silicon, which is made up of which metal? Silicon metal. And also single board, single chip is there, made up of silicon, silicon metal. On that board, that green board, which is the silicon chip, single silicon chip, on that we have placed thousands of what? Integrated circuits, or we can see here as pins, as yellow pins, and thousands of yellow pins are there, and these yellow pins are nothing but ICs, integrated circuits. So thousands of them are placed on this silicon chip on the green board, and so our microprocessor is made up of. So our microprocessor is now completed. So around 1970, this technology of placing thousands of integrated circuits onto a single silicon chip that was made up, a microprocessor was made available. So how we can define a microprocessor? It is a compact and easy to maintain. Okay, first of all, it is a compact and easy to maintain. So we can say a circuit board, and it has a high processing speed, and that's what is needed for a computer, because a computer wants to have a high processing speed, because a computer has a IPO cycle, means input and process and output cycle, means computer takes input and then processes it and then gives the output. So for processing, it needs a processing speed, a good speed, a high speed. So for processing speed, doing the processing part of the IPO cycle, so it needs a good speed, a high speed. So to maintain a high speed, and so a device is made which is known as microprocessor, which is whose size is very much compact, and also it is easy to maintain, as thousands of ICs are integrated on this particular single silicon chip, and so it gives a high processing speed to our computers or laptops. However, it has limitations also on the size of data, that how much data it can handle. It doesn't seem like that we can say that that so many type of data it can handle. There are some of the circumstances, or we can say scenarios or conditions on like which type of data. Is it like small data, huge data? What is the frequency of data? Means how much amount of data that it can handle. It can be given to this microprocessor, so that otherwise it can hang. So the amount of data is also a good factor on which the size of microprocessor will depend, or the quality of microprocessor, that will depend. As we are saying, whenever we used to go to buy shops and showrooms to buy our computer laptop, we used to ask what is the speed, what is the processor, because if good processor, good speed, it means our computer will work like smoothness would be there. Okay, it would not hang, it would not goes to like failure and all. Although we can use it at the same time multitasking, like same time we are downloading, we are using games, we are doing some of the computational things, we are listening songs, we are doing so many things at the same time. So, and that too also playing so many things, important softwares and all, for doing critical works. So the help also handling the data is very much important. That's why we are saying that limitation of data is very much important. It is a very much needed and important factor on which the microprocessor speed is depending on. So a microprocessor needs to have a high speed, although it has a high processing speed, and its limitations is what? On the size of data. Means on the size of data which it has to handle. On that, the performance of microprocessor will depend. So we could now define here in the fact file, a microprocessor is a multi-purpose programmable device that takes input, okay, and provides output. As I have said, takes input, IPO, takes input, okay, takes input and provides output, okay, input, output, and in between this is the P, which is the processing. What is this? That is the processing, and the processing is done by processor. The processing is done by the processor, and how fast the processor would be, then the fast would be the output, and so our IPO cycle will move smoothly and our computer will work like very much smooth. It's like a cakewalk for the person or the end user. So a microprocessor is a multi-purpose programmable device. Because multi-purpose, we are doing so many things at the same time only, and this is facilitated us by the help of microprocessor, which processes the things, the inputs. So the processing is done by the help of microprocessors. The multi-purpose and programmable device that takes input and provides output. See here, the example is also given. Intel 4004 was the world's, the company name is Intel, who at that time invented the microprocessor. So Intel 4004 was the world's first commercial means it was available, it was done for the business purpose. So Intel 4004 was the world's first microprocessor, okay, which was available commercially, that you can buy at that time. In that time, in the 90s, the 1900s, the name of microprocessor was Intel 4004. That was the world's first commercial available microprocessor, and also it was the first complete CPU, okay, means we can say the brain, we can say the thing. And this one more point, students, this microprocessor is attached where? On the motherboard, okay. So our first complete CPU, this CPU is incomplete, we can say CPU is incomplete. The central processing unit, which is a processing device, is incomplete. Central processing unit, CPU, why it got its name as a processing device? Because the CPU has a motherboard, and on the motherboard we have placed a microprocessor, and that microprocessor is specifically responsible for the processing speed. We are saying that CPU is responsible for the processing speed. Yeah, we can say in general purpose CPU is responsible, but inside CPU there is a motherboard, and on that motherboard there is a microprocessor, and so in general we can say CPU is responsible for the processing speed, but in specific the motherboard inside the CPU, and that too on that motherboard there is a microprocessor that is specifically responsible for the processing speed. Means microprocessor on the motherboard, and that motherboard inside the CPU is responsible on the whole. Specifically microprocessor is responsible, and generally we can say CPU is responsible. So for what? Processing speed. So we could say, what we can say, a CPU is incomplete without a microprocessor. Without a microprocessor, CPU is incomplete. That's why it is said it was the first complete CPU. Why complete CPU? Because earlier, without the invention of microprocessor, the CPU was like incomplete. So as the microprocessor was invented, first time, the Intel 4004, as it was the world's first commercial available microprocessor, so when it was made, so it then was placed on the motherboard, and that motherboard was placed fixed inside the CPU, that square box, or we can say rectangular box, and then our CPU say that now I am complete. So the first complete CPU, okay, the first complete CPU then was completed by the help of the company whose name was Intel Corporation, which we can say in the shortcut as Intel, whose invention was the microprocessor. So the Intel, that's why the microprocessor name was, world's first commercial available microprocessor name was Intel. The company whose complete name is Intel Corporation, that given. First name was given as Intel 4004. That was the world's first commercial available microprocessor. And when that microprocessor Intel 4004 was placed on the motherboard and that was fixed in the CPU, then that CPU was known to be as a complete CPU, world's first complete CPU, okay, on one chip, okay, on one chip. Means because see, CPU is the main like square board, so many things are there, fan is there, okay, motherboard is there, okay, circuits are there, ports are there, okay, wires are there, okay, but the main CPU, what we can say is we can say as the microprocessor only. So microprocessor acts as is the main CPU. Means whatever we used to see, okay, the big box, big rectangular box or square box, we say it as a CPU. But inside that CPU, the motherboard is there, and on that particular motherboard, there is a microprocessor. So that microprocessor is known as the main acting CPU. Okay. So that was the first complete CPU on one single chip. Okay, on that one particular single silicon chip. Okay, so that was possible by the world's first commercially available microprocessor, whose name was Intel 4004. That was designed by the Intel Corporation company. Okay, friends, that's it. That's it from my side. I think, hope so, you might have cleared this topic. Okay, now we would move further with the 5th generation computers in our next lecture. Okay, friends, by that time, I think we would be revising each and every topics, whatever we have read till now, and it would be far much better for you for the understanding level and the other exercises, to solve other exercises and all. Okay, students, so one thing that I want to conclude, that a microprocessor is a multi-purpose programmable device that takes the input and provides output by processing the inputs, so completes the IPO cycle and makes the computer work very much efficiently by working smoothly, as the IPO cycle will keep on revolving and all. And so the world's first commercial microprocessor was available, whose name was Intel 4004. That was designed by the company Intel Corporation, whose short name is Intel. So the first microprocessor name was Intel 4004. And so whatever we see as a microprocessor, or we can say as a CPU, so actually the CPU is the actual acting CPU is our microprocessor, and that microprocessor is, we can say, set up on the motherboard, okay, and that motherboard is fixed in the rectangular box, which we used to say as a CPU, a central processing unit. But that CPU is normally a CPU, okay, a central processing unit, but actually what works as a CPU is our microprocessor. That's why when the first commercial microprocessor was available, okay, whose name was Intel 4004, and as it was placed on the motherboard, then it was said the CPU was made complete. So it was the first complete CPU, and as it is a microprocessor which is placed on a single silicon chip, so that single silicon chip on which where so many integrated circuits are placed, so a microprocessor is made, and that microprocessor is placed on the motherboard, so the complete CPU was made, and that microprocessor was named as Intel 4004, was designed by Intel Corporation. Okay, students, that's it from my side, and now we would be covering the 5th generation of computers in our next lecture, that would be lecture number 7. Okay, students, by that time you keep on revising the topics and all, and keep practicing with the questions Okay, and this lecture would be helpful for all the students whose topic would be evolution of computers and the generation of computers and the microprocessors. Okay students, that's it, and we would be meeting in the next lecture, that would be lecture number 7, whose name would be fifth generation of computers. Okay students, thank you.